while the Finance Ministry is leaving no stone unturned to revive investor confidence and convince rating agencies for an upgrade, S&P's Asia-Pacific economist Paul Gruenwald says that there may be space for the RBI to cut rates. Loose fiscal policy could pose a challenge, and that investments can only be spurred if investors can be assured of consistency in policies. Let's listen in.
We see both deficits at around 5% of GDP, and you're right, the current account's going to get a bit better because global oil prices and global gold prices have been coming down, so that's going to give India a boost. We think the government's recent budget with the path getting to a 3% deficit over the medium term is going to help. That's going to spill over into a stronger current account as well. So what we want to do is get India's twin deficits down to around the 3% range. That's more sustainable. It's going to set India up for a new round of stronger growth.
Inflation and growth, of course, there's always a trade-off there, and we've seen persistent inflation in India, which is why there was a very conservative monetary policy, hawkish to be very precise. We've seen the RBI come down with some monetary easing very recently. Do you think there is further scope of monetary easing, and where do you see inflation as far as FY14 is concerned?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit more scope for monetary easing. The RBI is in a tough spot because the fiscal policy is a bit loose, and if we think about the macro policy mix, they're working with a sort of an assumption of weak fiscal policy, so they can't do as much on monetary policy. So, I mean, we think inflation's going to trend down over the next year. India's still growing below its potential growth rate. So, in a good scenario, you know, we can see inflation maybe falling another percentage point from here, but I think you're right. The RBI is going to be very cautious because their room for maneuver is actually quite limited.
The government has taken a few steps to boost investments. There's a cabinet committee on investments. They're looking at liberalizing FDI norms so that there's some amount of capital flow. There has been some amount of easing as far as RBI is concerned, which was expected to boost investments. The investment cycle really hasn't kicked off. What do you think is holding it back, and do you think any of these moves that the government has taken is enough to attract flows to India?
Well, first of all, India wants to attract more FDI, kind of longer-term flows, because that makes your current account more sustainable. There's a perception in the investment community that there's been a bit of back and forth on the point of the government. So, in our view, it's more a question of consistency. But we think moves to liberalize the foreign direct investment regime, getting clarity around those, getting clarity around local content, some of those other things. Once that's done properly and consistently, we think those longer-term flows will come in. That's going to benefit India.